You know, niggas gotta get their priorities together. Got their mind on the wrong things, spending their money in the wrong way.
Trapaholic, real trap shit.
Say you need that car with the rims and a trunk, just like Jim. It's more than life. Yeah.
I'm telling you. Talk to him.
Say you need that LV bag with the belt and the hat.
That's all you got though.
It's more than life. Yeah.
Talk to him. Real.
Say you wanna turn up at the club, buy some bottles, impress them girls. It's more than life.
Fucking everybody.
Yeah.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Saints and Appetizers podcast and Who Dat. And we got some main course for you, some tasty, main course that's the main thing I want to talk about. Something that actually makes me want to talk about Saints football and what's going on in the NFL. So some tasty main course. Some very nice main course, and what I'm talking about is the New Orleans Saints 38-27 victory over the Indianapolis Colts on Sunday. That was a noontime game in Indianapolis. So the Saints, they finally had an offensive explosion, but the defense didn't look good. Like, that was about the third week in a row that the defense didn't look good, allowing 17 points in the first half in 3 weeks in a row. But combined in those 3 games, they've only allowed like 17 points in the second half. Crazy stat. That's something that Dennis Allen's good at, is doing second time a half adjustments, but he needs to work on first half adjustments. So you're not just spotting every team we're playing this year 17 points in the first half and then just going from there. So we need to clean up some things in the first half. But let's get into this game a little bit with some of the highlights and key moments, and then we'll go over player of the game, hot take, and game pick. But anyways, let's get in this. So can I get a menu? And so first, this was a weird one. I've seen this like twice now. It seems like this is almost like a new trend now. They're making an old trend a new trend. And what I'm talking about is the Colts. They won the toss. They won the coin toss, and then they actually elected to receive. And I've heard that one other time with another team this year. But that used to always be the case, that NFL teams, if they won the toss, and they always elected to receive. But because several years ago, they've liked the opportunity to try to double dip, or maybe you don't really get going until towards the end of until the end of the first half. So maybe it would be better off for some of these teams that are kind of slow going, for them to get the ball when they're already heated up, So that was the first thing that was interesting in this game, which wondered if that was a telltale of how the Colts felt, as if they could start fast against the Saints or what. But they were right. They were able to start fast, but they weren't able to keep it up. They weren't able to keep it up. But anyways, it was the 38 second mark, 10-minute 38-second mark of the first quarter. It's a 2nd and 4, and Jonathan Taylor looks like he's about to get stopped in the backfield, but then he's able to work his way out of there and bounce outside and pick up a really good run. And just from that play alone, I'm thinking, oh man, they're gonna Jonathan Taylor and Zach Moss, they're gonna rush for 200 yards on the Saints today, and they very, very well could have. I believe if they'd kept running it, kept handing it to them consistently, that they probably could have got Jonathan Taylor and Zach Moss both 100 yards rushing because they did get Jonathan Taylor with 12 carries for 95 yards with a 7.9 average with the 42-yard long, no touchdown. And then Zach Moss had 11 carries for 66 yards with a 6 yard average and a 41-yard long and a touchdown. So that's one area where I think the Colts messed up a little bit, was not just continually. They just felt the need to pass it way too much when hell they were ripping off 20, 15, 20-yard gains like on almost every carry. They had picked up all those yards off of just 22 touches. Almost had 200 yards rushing off of just 22 touches. It's crazy. So then a couple plays later, it's a 10:06 mark in the first quarter, and it's a 1st and 10. And then Jonathan Taylor takes off and has an even bigger run. And this one was one where they were. This must have been the 42-yarder that looked like he was going to take it to the house, but the commentators were talking about how he needs to find where the video board is in the stadium, so he doesn't have to keep looking behind himself, looking to the side, looking to behind himself, because they said that's what they thought slowed him down on that run, because they thought he should have definitely had a surefire touchdown on that run, but didn't matter because the Saints go through this weird situation where they get the Colts in 4th and inches, and then the defensive line is able to hold its water, and the Colts and Gardner Minshew, they don't do the tush push or the quarterback sneak or anything, and they just take a delay a game and back up and kick like what was it? It was like a 34-yard field goal or something, and then a flag comes in and it shows like video of Brian Bresee just barely being over. Like he literally had to have been like only an inch or maybe two over, like covering up the long snapper on the kick, which I guess is a personal foul. But that was a ticky tack call. And then of course the Colts come back on the field and get down in that tush push quarterback sneak position, and they end up doing like a play where the wide receiver just kind of leaks out, kind of a bit of a trick play, and receivers ended up left like wide open for a touchdown. Yeah, Michael Pittman Jr. is like left wide open for a touchdown on that play. They really shot themselves in the foot there on what was kind of a ticky tack call, but they should even getting it back in 4th and inches where it was. They should have been prepared for a trick play out of that. But so after Brian Bresee's ticky tack flag, personal foul for covering up the center, it's 7-10, 7-0 Colts. That's late in the first quarter. So then it's the 3:50 mark of the first quarter. It's a 1st and 10, and the Saints have moved the ball down into like the Colts red zone, and it's a 1st and 10. And Alvin Kamara makes a great catch, showing like ridiculous balance over the middle with the catch, and takes it all the way for like an 18-yard touchdown, and that ends up tying the game back 7-7. And Alvin Kamara, since he's come back, each week he just looks better and better and better, and I think he's going to look even better now that they have a healthy Jamal Williams back, and they have a Kendra Miller who's slowly progressing and getting more experience. I think that's a lethal trio of running backs there, especially Alvin Kamara, now that he's got some people that can give him a breather every now and again. That's really what Alvin Kamara is all about, is picking up big chunk plays and stuff. And when he was like really the only good running back on the team, you really started to not really see that stuff anymore. All right, so it's 7-7 there. Saints Defense does good, gets the Colts off the field, and then the Saints get back on the field offensively, and it's the 14-25 mark of the second quarter, and Derek Carr gets strip sacked by DeForest Buckner. And on this play, it looked like Derek Carr jumped back to pass, and it looked like he had time to throw. Like it didn't look like he needed to step up, but he when he stepped up, he literally stepped up right into the sack and the strip sack. That was one of those ones where you could argue, yeah, it was maybe the offensive line, or yeah, maybe it was Derek Carr holding on to the ball all along. But even besides those two, it was almost because Derek Carr didn't have great pocket awareness and being able to manipulate the pocket very well on that play, because he literally stepped up right into the sack fumble there. So that I think that was the only sack the Saints allowed all game, and that's with Andres Pete as your left tackle and Max Garcia as your left guard. But you had your three original starters to start the year with Eric McCoy, Cesar Ruiz, and Ryan Ramczyk. But yeah, you could argue that the Saints offensive line looked better, as good as it has all year, besides that play there. But that's one of those plays where there's been a lot of them. The 20 or so sacks that Carr has been sacked this year, you could say half of them could argue or maybe his fault. And I think if you look at this one, you could think of that. And so yeah, so that fumble and recovery by the Colts, that sets them up with good field position, and they move down into the red zone and goal to go situations. And so it's 11 minute and 42-second mark of the second quarter. It's a second and goal, and Zach Moss had already gotten the ball and got it down in around the 1 to 2 yard line, and really showing tough running. And then he does it again. They give it to Zach Moss again. He powers his way in for a touchdown. It was like a 1 or 2 yard touchdown run where he was piled up on a bunch of bodies and stretching over the back of the end zone. So that was just a tough run, and good play by the Colts, to put them back up. That would have put them up. I think that have put them up 14. That may have put them up 17 to 7 at that point. So the Saints are once again have allowed 17 points and a half and are down by multiple scores, three weeks in a row now that's happened. And so it's the 8:29 mark of the second quarter. Olave picks up a first down on 1st and 10. But on this play, the defender that was covering him fell down and was nowhere to be found. This is something that every time I see a player do this, go out of bounds before the first down marker, which he didn't do on this situation. This is similar to what I'm getting to. But go out of bounds when it looks like they could at least pick up another 5 yards. Yeah, on this play, man, there was no one around him when he's scampering out of bounds. There was no one around him 5 yards in front of him, 5 yards behind him, 5 yards to the right of him, 5 yards to the left. That was just horrible awareness by Olave. He should have been able to cut that catch and run upfield for another 5-10 yards instead of just scampering out of bounds with no one even close to him at the time. And obviously it's the 8:29 mark of the second quarter, so they're not trying to preserve clock or anything either. So after that touchdown, that's the one where he left a lot of meat on the bone there. So then the drive continues. So he got the first down. He'd be getting a lot harder if it would have been on third down, and he wouldn't have only picked up 9 yards on 3rd and 10 or something. So anyways, this is a good drive that they got going here. It's the 7:35 mark of the second quarter. It's a 1st and 10, and Taysom Hill has a quarterback draw run out of the shotgun for a 20-yard run, and that gives the Saints a 20 yeah 14-17 uh, deficit. So the Colts are still leading at this point, 17-14, and that was the first 20-yard run all year from the Saints. Because a lot of people talk about how the offensive line hasn't been good, or the pass protection hasn't been good, but the run blocking hasn't been good either. Obviously, clearly, with them not having rushed for 20 plus yard run all year until that time. And then and so the Saints defense, they play good. They get like a 3-and-out. A couple plays later, the Saints already got the ball back, and the Colts are leading 17-14 at this point. But it's the 5:50 mark of the second quarter, and it's second and 15, and the Saints are close to midfield, and Carr hits Rashid Shaheed deep for a 58-yard touchdown, and that gives the Saints a 21-17 yard 21-17 lead finally, and this is a lead that they didn't want to vanquish. Once they got a hold of it, they didn't want to vanquish this lead, and they did a good job of protecting it through the rest of the game. So the Colts get like one more drive, and they're kind of moving a little bit down into the Saints territory. It's 30 seconds left of the second quarter. It's a 3rd and 1, and it's incomplete to Seattle. It's incomplete, and they have to settle for a field goal to make it 21-20, and that was just like a bad route combination, or a bad throw by Gardner Minshew there, and they were on the move on that drive. They didn't do a great job of like preserving their timeouts, or this wasn't a good 2-minute drive by the Colts there, that they ended up having to settle for just 3 points to still keep the Saints ahead 21-20. So then the Saints, let's see, it's this play is after the Saints started moving the ball pretty well, and it's like around like the 7:40 mark of the third quarter. It's a 3rd and 6, and Derek Carr throws a pass like right to Chris Olave, like he's like right in the middle of the field, like wide open, nobody's around him, and Olave puts his hands up like this to try to catch it, and it just bounced off his helmet. Like if he would have caught it, it would have been a surefire touchdown. Like no doubt about it. It would have been like I don't know, like a 50-yard touchdown, and just dropped it. And then on the next down, it's the 7:35 mark of the third quarter. It's 3rd and 6, and Carr's incomplete to Olave. After it's incomplete to Olave again, and this time Olave's open. He's wide open again, but it's just not a good throw this time. So that was a very frustrating moment in this game, where it's still just 21-20, and Saints are just trying to hold on to this lead. And there were several opportunities and situations where the Colts could have got back in this game and took the lead back, but the Saints did a good job of getting it and not vanquishing it. So then it's the 5:14 mark of the third quarter, and Zach Moss has a big run, putting the Colts in good field position. And then just a couple play later, it's the 4:02 mark of the third. It's a 2nd and 6. Gardner Minshew throws an interception in the end zone to Paulson Adebo. And this play I thought was going to be like very similar to the interception that ended up being called down like at the 1 in a couple games ago. And then when Debo was like pushed back into the end zone after getting the interception. I was thinking, well, does he kneel it here and get the touchdown? But no, Debo did a good job of taking it out of the end zone and picking it up like 30 yards and taking it to the Colts 30-yard line. So that was a big time play because the Colts were in field goal range at that point. So they would have been able to take the lead back 23 to 21. It wouldn't have been for that touchdown that return. I mean, that interception, that big interception return, and it would have been interesting to see where Adebo would have originally got tackled if he'd have got tackled in the end zone. If they'd have tried to say that its forward progress was stopped and try to put the Saints at the one again or what. But luckily that didn't happen. They didn't have to deal with it. So Saints moved the ball a little bit more, and it's the 13-second mark of the third quarter. It's a second and 10, and Kamara has a 16-yard touchdown run, and that puts the Saints up. That would put the Saints up 34 to or 35 to 20, I think, or yeah, 35 to 20, or 38 to 20, or 28 to 20 is what the score was then. And it's then the Saints defense gets the ball back again, even after just scoring a touchdown, and then losing their field goal position. It's the 13:29 mark of the fourth quarter. It's a 1st and 10. And Taysom Hill's been doing everything in this game, from being a receiver to being a quarterback, and now he and being a runner. But now this one, he's a quarterback, and he goes deep to Shaheed, and it's like this is a crazy like diving catch, and it's a classic Taysom Hill looking deep ball. It looks almost more like a punt than it does a pass, and luckily Shaheed lays out for it and gets both hands on it as he's going to the ground, and the defenders getting his hands on it at the same time, like simultaneously, and that the only thing that made me think that maybe it was intercepted by the defender was that he kind of just pulled it away like at the last second. But the second Shaheed hits the ground and had his hands on the ball, it was down. It was over at that point. But that was a sketchy, little bit of a sketchy moment in the game that the Saints pretty much had complete control over. That's a daring thing to do, really, at that point in that moment of the game, to on first down to throw a deep ball with Taysom Hill. But hey, it worked, so that's all that matters. So the Saints got down in the Colts red zone then, and it's the 10:54 mark of the fourth. It's 1st and goal, and the Saints had already done a couple of these runs and were in 1st and goal, and then there was a face mask call by the Colts, giving the Saints a new set of downs. So then it's 1st and goal, and Taysom Hill runs it in for a touchdown behind Colin Saunders, the big 99 nose tackle. They did that a couple times down there, and got the score and took the lead 35 to 20 at this point. So they pretty much have the game under control here at this point, or at least it feels like that. But then the Colts, they score quickly again. It's the 8:29 mark of the fourth. It's 2nd and 8. Gardner Minshew is like scrambling around in the backfield and rolling out to his right and stopping and setting his feet and completing a 34-yard touchdown to Drew Ogletree, who's covered by Jordan Howding, who looked like he had enough space out in front of him to where if he'd have just turned his head and made a break on the ball, could have intercepted it. But he's still a young player, and there's good and bad with young players like that. But I mean, The Saints still led 35-27 at this point, and then the Saints got the ball back, weren't able to do anything with it, and then uh, the Colts got it back and got set, just went nothing but backwards on their next drive. It was a four 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 4 minute and 40-second minutes of the fourth quarter. It's a 3rd and 18 on their own 8-yard line, and Gardner Minshew actually was able to pass for a first down. Uh, 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 just that it was a 3rd and 18 drives me crazy, but they weren't able to pick up anything really after that. So just a minute and 40 seconds later, so three minute mark of the fourth quarter, it's a 3rd and 13. So similar situation to the Colts on their previous drive, like they're backed up 3rd and long, but Carr puts the dagger in the Colts again. I've heard this a couple times this year with Carr and Rashid Shaheed, like putting people to sleep and putting the dagger in people, and that's what happened here on this 3rd and 13 deep ball to Rashid Shaheed, keeping it in bounds and keeping the clock going, and then they just get down in the goal-to-goal situation and make the Colts use all their timeouts, and it's the 28-second mark of the fourth quarter. It's 4th and goal, and Blake Grupe hits the last points of the game with a 27-yard field goal. So, yeah, this was a game that felt early on that it was going to go the same way that the two previous games, previous weeks have gone with the Jaguars and how those games have fallen apart, where I guess it was the Jaguars and the Texans, where like the Saints had opportunities to get in those games or looked like they had control of those games at one point, but weren't able to finish it and weren't able to score in the red zone enough when they needed to. But they were able to do that in Indianapolis. The main thing that I will say that I didn't like about this game is that their defense just didn't seem to play real well. I guess you have to credit some of that to the strip sack that the Colts got off of Carr that put them in good field position to give them one of their scores. But just the whole allowing 17 points in every half, they need to do something to clean that up. But it's still nice to get the win. Uh, we'll it's nice to be 4-4, and everyone else in the NFC lost. The Buccaneers lost. The Falcons lost. The only one team that won was like what, the 0-6, 0-7 Panthers actually finally won a game. But no, it feels like the Saints are right back in this thing now, being 4-4, having as many wins as anyone else in the NFC South. But let's so the trade deadline was Tuesday, and I think a lot of people were talking about the Saints maybe needing like some pass rush, because their pass rush was a little bit better in this game against the Colts, but it wasn't very good against the Jaguars, and it wasn't very good against the Texans. And they're still missing Peyton Turner, and the only real production you're getting from anyone on the defensive line for consistent pressure is probably Carl Granderson, and that's it. But here's some players that were traded yesterday, and kind of talk about whether the Saints could have afforded any of these players. So the New York Giants traded Leonard Williams, defensive tackle. He's like a three-tech pass rushing defensive tackle. They traded them to Seattle for, man, they got a 2nd-round pick and a 5th-round pick. So the Saints would have never given up that much for a player, but that's quite a bit for a player like Leonard Williams, who's a good veteran player, but it's not like he's like he's young and has like a high ceiling or anything. He's pretty much probably played his best seasons in the league. So that they got a 2nd-round pick, kind of surprising off of that. And then Philadelphia Eagles, they traded Kentavious Street, and Kentavious Street in a 2025 seventh round pick to Atlanta Falcons for 2024 sixth round pick. So essentially nothing. They made that trade. The Falcons made that trade to replace Grady Jarrett. And the Saints had Contavious Street on their team last couple seasons, so I don't think if the Saints were trying to add a defensive lineman out of the ones that were traded yesterday, I don't think that one would have had much impact. But I believe Leonard Williams one probably would have, and then this next one will have, and it may affect the Saints coming up in this next game this week, which is this is such an odd trade by a team that seems pretty much out of it. They're what 2-5 or 2-6. The Chicago Bears they traded a 2024 second round pick for Montez Sweat. So the Saints thought it was going to be a pretty much of a gimme type of win with the Chicago Bears coming to New Orleans. The 2-6 Chicago Bears coming to New Orleans, and they're playing a backup quarterback right now because Justin Fields is hurt and don't really have any big names on their defense. And well, now the Saints may actually have to worry about them a little bit more now because Montez Sweat, he's having a career year. I think he's got like 6.5 sacks or something. So that's out of all these trades, it's not the fact that the Saints didn't make any of them that are annoying, but it's the fact that some of the teams that the Saints are going to be playing made some of them, and that one's just a head scratcher. Seeing how the Chicago Bears are pretty much out of it. I imagine if they're making that trade, giving up a second round pick, they're planning on making him a long time free agent. Like they're gonna make him a long time Bear is what the idea is. And then talking about player teams like the Falcons, they lost Grady Jarrett, so they had to add Contavious Street. Well, the Minnesota Vikings, even worse than just losing Grady Jarrett, they lost their starting quarterback in Kirk Cousins. So they had to trade a 2024 sixth round pick, and in return got who's been the Arizona Cardinals starting quarterback, Joshua Dobbs, and they got a 2024 seventh round pick back and Joshua Dobbs back. So be interesting to see if Dobbs who hasn't been terrible, hasn't put up horrible numbers in Arizona, but it'd be interesting to see if he'll look even better with the Minnesota Vikings and with the weapons they have, and if Justin Jefferson comes back. And the Saints, kind of like the Chicago Bears, the Saints play them in 2 weeks. So instead of getting to play them without the Kirk Cousins-less Vikings or the Josh Dobbs-less Vikings, well, they have at least a new backup quarterback, second string, second option now that the Saints may have to face. So it'll be interesting to see if he's a better player now. It looks better with more weapons in Minnesota. And then this one is one people talked about quite a bit. They were talking about, oh, there's a lot of defensive linemen that can be added, maybe safeties and stuff like that. But if you got a struggling offensive line, or your offensive line is no good, like you're just out of luck because no teams trade, no teams trade quality offensive linemen. But there looks like there was one traded here. Let's see. The Minnesota Vikings who we were just talking about, they traded Zara Cleveland to the Jacksonville Jaguars for a sixth round pick, and he's like a 25. He was originally a second round pick of the Minnesota Vikings, the 58th overall pick, and he's only 25 years old. That's crazy. You can't tell me that that's not a quality player. And he's started pretty much every game in the 4 seasons that he's been with the Minnesota Vikings. The last 2 seasons, he's started every game. Like, wow, the Saints could have probably used Zara Cleveland. So one of the head scratchers there too. That kind of goes along with the Montez Sweat one, not just because of Montez Sweat going to the Bears, but and the Saints could have maybe used Montez Sweat as well. The only difference there is I don't think the Saints would have given up a second round pick. Same thing with Leonard Williams, but I think the Saints would have given up a sixth round pick, 2024 sixth round pick for Zara Cleveland. Got just a couple more here. Then the Detroit Lions trade a sixth round pick for Donovan Peoples-Jones, wide receiver, who's, he's just like a third, fourth string rotational wide receiver. Nothing that would have helped the Saints at all. And then the Buffalo Bills trade a third round pick for Rasul Douglas and a 2024 fifth round pick. So, a secondary player, a safety. It's not really a position of need for the Saints. And then the last one is the San Francisco 49ers trade a 2024 third round pick for Chase Young. So the two premier pass rushers from Washington have been traded away, Montez Sweat and Chase Young. But, really would like to say, like, oh, yeah, the Saints should have made one of these trades, or it would have been nice if the Saints could have got one of these guys. Well, the reason that they probably couldn't get him is they don't have any third or fourth round picks. The only one of these trades that they could have pulled off would have been the Zara Cleveland one, because they have a couple. They have maybe 2 or 3 sixth round picks. So it's frustrating that the Saints didn't make any of these moves. But at the same time, I understand why, because they don't have the draft capital to do so. But I would love to have Montez Sweat or Chase Young added to the Saints roster, or if nothing else, have Montez Sweat somewhere else. And then I would love to have a Zara Cleveland as well with the Saints. Shaky offensive line, injured at the moment offensive line. But so that's a bit of the trade talk. Let's get into this game with just the players of the games and some hot takes and kind of my game pick. Got some stats here. So I picked my player of the game because he was coming back. He missed a couple injuries, a couple games due to injuries, and he hadn't really shown out or done anything this year yet. And I picked Juwan Johnson to maybe have like 50 yards or maybe a touchdown or something. And well, Juwan Johnson, he didn't. It's good to see him back out there. Good to see him healthy. He was blocking and helping block because they were running the ball good with Taysom Hill and Alvin Kamara and Jamal Williams. But offensively, he didn't have a big output. Hasn't all year really yet. But so Juwan Johnson had 1 catch for 5 yards with 2 targets. So he is far from what I was predicting for my player of the game. If you're going to pick a player of the game, it would probably be Taysom Hill, who had 9 carries for 63 yards with a 7-yard average with that 20-yard long touchdown, and then the 2 touchdowns. And then he also passed twice, completing a 44-yard long completion to Rashid Shaheed. And then he also had 1 catch for 14 yards on 1 target. So that would probably be your player of the game, or it would be Rashid Shaheed, who had the 3 catches for 153 yards, which is a 51-yard average with a 58-yard long, which is a touchdown off of 3 targets. So he was averaging like 50 yards a catch, which was just nuts. And he helped the Saints take the lead, and he helped the Saints put the dagger in them with the last big play to was able to run the time off and get a game clinching field goal. So So I didn't hit with my player of the game. There's obviously several other players that would have been better options. Derek Carr could have even been an option because he was 19 for 27 for 310 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, and a quarterback rating of 133.3. So it could be Derek Carr before it would be Juwan Johnson with his measly 1 catch for 5 yards. Okay, so now my hot take. So I mentioned how the Saints defense hadn't looked good the past 2 weeks against Tennessee, or not Tennessee, the Texans and the Jaguars. And a big reason for that is that they hadn't been able to get like any pressure on those quarterbacks, hadn't been able to get any sacks and didn't get any sacks. I think maybe just got one against the Texans and didn't get any against the Jaguars. They had like an 8% pass rush percentage, like that's how often that they were actually affecting uh, affecting the Jaguars quarterback last week. They just couldn't do anything. But I thought they were going to correct that in this game. I thought they were going to get at least three sacks in this game, and they weren't able to do that. But I almost want to put an asterisk by that and say that they did, because so Nathan Shepard, he got 1 sack. He had 3 total tackles, 1 solo with a sack, and then Carl Granderson had 6 total tackles, 3 solo with a sack. But Isaiah Foskey, he had a play where he had a hit on the quarterback, and honestly, I think it could have gone either way with how the football, as it looked like as if he was trying to put it away, or when he got hit, it got thrown like backwards. So I almost want to give like Isaiah Foskey credit for getting the interception and causing a fumble return for a touchdown. But of course, that didn't happen. But I still like to see Isaiah Foskey, the young player, getting hits on quarterbacks. And then, of course, just going with defense, had Paulson Adebo had 3 total tackles, 3 solo, an interception return for 27 yards and 3 pass deflections. And then we've all been, I think all of us have been kind of a little worried about Demario Davis with him wearing that big knee brace and not practicing, but he led the team in tackles with 12 tackles, 6 solo, and 1 pass deflection. So I wouldn't say that I hit on my player of the game, and I wouldn't say I hit on my hot take that the Saints pass rush would be excrementally better. Like it was better than it was against the Jaguars because it was basically non-existent in that game. But it wasn't 3 sacks better. It was three and almost strip sack better. But still, it led to a win, which that's all that matters. And so for my game pick, I picked the Saints to win this, but I did not expect them to have an offensive explosion like they did. And I kind of didn't even really expect that their defense to give up as many points as they did. But it all balanced out and added up to a Saints win. So I picked the Saints to win, but I thought they were just going to pull off another nail biter, barely be able to score more than 20 points, be able to hold the team they're playing under 20, under 21 points. And yeah, so I just picked a regurgitated score of 23-20, and I wasn't even close to that, to getting the score right. It was ended up being 38-27. So the Colts scored another touchdown, uh, one more touchdown than I predicted, and then what 15 more points than I predicted on offense, 23-38. So yeah, I wouldn't say I wouldn't say I did too great on any of my picks really. I'd say I probably with the 3 points that are available for your player of the game, your hot take, and your game pick, I would say I only got maybe about a half a point there because I just because I picked the Saints to win. That's about it. But anyways, I'm excited that the season is back, or it felt like it was time to start piling dirt on this season and try to just keep your eyes focused for like the draft and all that. But now the NFC South is all tied back up, and the Saints are tied for first. I mean, I think it's going to be a lot of this year where it's going to feel like one after 1 week and a game, it feels like all the season's over. We just blow everything up, and then the next week they win, and everyone else in the NFC South or just NFC in general loses, and then we're right back in it. I think it's going to be a real roller coaster like that all year. But hopefully they can get some easy wins against teams without their starting quarterbacks. And Chicago coming up next Sunday at noon on CBS, and then the Minnesota Vikings the week following. So let's see. Hopefully they can stack together some wins against some teams that they are better than. They are better than. But anyways, I think that's all I have for you. So who dat? And can I get a check, please?